an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering The Magicians, Season 5, Episode 13, Fillory and Further. In this episode, our friends succeed in creating a second Fillory 2.0, an improved version in which bacon grows in the wild and there are naturally occurring pizza ovens. Frankly, it sounds like a place I could really get behind. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Jessie for commissioning this episode. Jessie's in the chat. Hi, Jessie. Just showed up. This episode was a wild ride. I said last ep how I felt like I couldn't imagine how they wrapped up the season in one episode because there was so much left to talk about. There were so many remaining moving parts. There were so many unanswered questions. And in the end, I mean, obviously, as we know now, this wasn't supposed to be the end. So it makes sense in some ways that they didn't wrap everything up. There are still things that we don't really get our answers to or understand as well as we would have liked. But I feel like even considering that this wasn't meant to be the final season, it ends in a pretty good place in its way. Like, even though our friends have been separated again, and Elliot is sort of abandoned by the end of it. And I say abandoned, obviously, that's not exactly fair. But there is like a potential romance for him that seems to be blooming and a hopefulness to it, despite how kind of fucked up it is. And I think that was actually a pretty good way to end the show. Like, this show has just so consistently been about weirdness, about how nothing is ever like stable or predictable in this universe. And really what you get from this last episode is a sense that everybody is beginning to come to terms with that and accept that and try their best to roll with it, And I just thought that was like, I just didn't really know how they could get to a place where I was like satisfied with the ending. But I really feel good about this one. Surprisingly so. I've been tough on this season. I have felt several times like they were setting up interesting things that they didn't quite follow through with. And just in general, that this show has a ton of potential and it doesn't always realize it completely. I think that really what it comes down to when I think about like the shortcomings of this show is that I don't know if it's the writers, the producers, or what, but the show seems a little preoccupied with being hip and edgy at the expense of being a well-written story. So when they have the choice between doing something that makes sense or doing something that feels a little bit sacrilegious, a little bit irreverent, they're always going to pick the like irreverent thing instead of the thing that really would work better because they want to be funny. They want to be shocking a little bit, And I think really that's been sort of its Achilles heel. And this episode, it's like, I think they just didn't really have room to do that because it was the last one. Earlier in the season, they've made that kind of choice over and over again because they always had the next episode where they could like actually cope with a thing. And I think not leaving them any wiggle room actually worked out. So let's start talking from the beginning about Christmas. This is actually a really nice allusion to the Narnia books. I mean, anybody who's read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe remembers that Father Christmas shows up and gives each of them a gift, right? And I think that I remember hearing that, like, Tolkien, because, you know, he was friends with C.S. Lewis, that he really hated the fact that Father Christmas showed up in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and thought it was absolute bullshit. And it's an interesting thing because, like, I don't know if his problem was that it was specifically Father Christmas or if it was the, like, plot aspect of how Father Christmas gives them each a gift that winds up being, like, hugely important in its way. But to me, it sort of felt like it felt like a similar thing to, like, Galadriel, you know, giving each of the hobbits something that winds up being really helpful to them later on. And we find out that Father Christmas is the one who put the page from Quentin's notebook in that drawer for Alice to find. And he says basically that she needed something to draw her back into the world and get her in the game again. And she wouldn't be able to resist something that used to be her man's. That, you know, it felt like Quentin was already on this track and it would just cause her to have more interest in it inherently because she thought that he was already doing something with this and so it must be really important. And it's interesting to me that, like, the myriad ways that one could take that. I think that she takes it really well and understands the intent behind it and recognizes that it was actually, like, correct and wound up bringing her back into everything and she needed it. But I could really easily see somebody feeling very manipulated by that and unappreciative of it. I mean, the key is that he just leaves it somewhere for her to find, and anything beyond that is absolutely her choice. He hasn't taken free will away or anything like that. But, you know, I feel like if I was maybe in a different place than she seems to be regarding this quest, it really feels like at this point, the quest has taken on its own importance in her life. It's not about Quentin anymore. But if she weren't there yet and she found this out, it would shatter her, you know? I feel like if she had kept really kind of hammering home, this was important to Quentin, this is Quentin's thing, Quentin really believed in this, and then she found out, it would be very different the way that this goes down. But it works in this scene. So there's a stocking for everybody. And it's so great, too, because when she wakes up, the stockings are hung by the chimney with care. Everybody's names are on them. There's a fire crackling. There's a Christmas tree. There are, like, Christmas-themed pillows on their green chairs. There are poinsettias in the window. I mean, this is an Instagram photo, honestly. This is a good Christmas vibe. I like it. You all know. I still have my Christmas decorations up. It's January 15th. I can't take them down, guys. I need them. It's been a sad fucking year already. Give me my like warmth and comfort, please. Okay, I just don't want to give it up quite yet. It's fine. It's fine. So yeah, I just really like this. Felt comforting in a way that this show really rarely tries to go. They are always making things sort of weird, you know, but I felt like they allowed this a moment to breathe, have it be warm and sweet, and there be like a sort of sense of family to it. And I love Margot being excited about it because she's so cynical about so many things and affects to be like, you know, just kind of uninterested. And I enjoy any time she allows herself to be openly, outwardly impressed. So, and I love too, Alice says something about how Santa has a microplane for Josh and how Josh already has 6. And Santa's like, yeah, I don't know who you think I am, but I'm literally the fucking like god of gift giving. So I think that you could just back off. It's fine. And it turns out that he's been looking for this specific one and that they are sold out literally everywhere. And I am dying to know what about that microplane is special, because as a cook, they are different. The one I have now is really, really rough and cut the fuck out of my hands the first time I used it because I didn't understand. Some of them are smooth and lovely. And I wonder what it is about that one that makes him just want it in particular, that made it sell out, you know? Not something that I should really be getting preoccupied by, but I can't help it because Josh and I relate to each other in a lot of ways. Elliot has this bracelet and he doesn't really get it. And when Alice earlier asked Santa what that was, he says, no idea, which I found funny. Zelda gets an awesome white tobacco pipe with like a tortoiseshell stem. And knowing that she like dies very shortly after this, I was like, what the fuck? Margot gets a box on a chain, and I didn't get it at first. And it's like obviously meant to hold her eyeball so that she can send that along with people. Fen gets a knife sharpener. And I think that Penny gets like one of those papooses, if I'm not mistaken, like a baby Bjorn. I'm not sure that's what it is. And Julia gets a baby bag. And a bunny appears at this point and says, Fillory needs you immediately. So then we have our gathering where everybody is determining what roles they're going to play and what they're going to do to evacuate Fillory and make sure that the place actually gets like fully emptied, you know, that there isn't going to be a couple of people somewhere that just get forgotten and killed, because it would suck. And as they're talking about this, Plum walks in. Now, I like what they wind up doing with Plum a little bit later, in that she has been part of like an attempt at the time travel to undo things already. But I have to admit, her involvement at this point feels really weird. It's not just the fact that she's being included at all. It's that she just walks into the apartment like she's always been there in a way that doesn't feel like accurate to my understanding of their relationship with her. And they're feeling very free to share every aspect of their plans with her, when I haven't really felt like there was any, like, I didn't know that they had told her anything, you know, that she had any idea what was going on. So the fact that they're like explaining all of it to her now, I mean, she has known because of the time travel with Penny, but like, I guess her overall involvement has felt very like, when we've absolutely had no choice but to make her be part of the story for, you know, what she can do. And I felt really taken aback at her walking in here. And it turns out later, like, she was able to create a time loop and try again, but she got the one shot. And she is here to try and talk them out of doing the things that went wrong the last time. And they really don't take her suggestions seriously. She, first question, will you know they're all raptured? And Josh says that he knows the thing that's in the castle, which winds up being sort of a magical, like, census sheet. And let's see, where I'm trying to find the spot where Elliot, because like each part of this plan, they are sort of sharing. Elliot says, we'll turn back the clock. Then we get ready to say goodbye to Fillory. And I think she says, with you still on it. And Margot says, obviously not. We need to get the fuck out. We need a traveler. And they are really struggling to figure out what they're going to do to get out. In the end, what we do is Margot lies, says she knows a shortcut that she's never mentioned before, And then when it comes time, is like, psych, I didn't know a shortcut. I'm definitely gonna die. Bye, suckers! Not like that, but, a little bit. Because they try and act like they're going to come with her. And she's like, I'm literally doing this so that you guys don't die. So if you follow me, I'm going to be really mad. Like, that will just negate everything I just did. So don't you dare. And, all of it winds up working out because of the baby and Penny. So they start off their, like, there's this thing going on, and I'm not entirely sure still that I understand what happened here. Julia is getting her checkup because she is about to go into labor, or she started labor. Her water breaks when they are like in the midst of creating this plan. So they're prepping her, finding out if she wants to take some drugs, whatever. And they get interrupted by Dean Fogg showing up, and he's screaming. And Katie is saying, when we sent Psycho Fogg to the realm, it spit ours back out. He called me. He couldn't really talk. And she says something about like a fear fog, and there's like this horror-struck look on his face, and he's screaming repeatedly. It's almost like he's too scared to like scream in a normal way. And I can't, it spit him back out. I'm just trying to get straight exactly what's supposed to happen here. Do they have like a protective fog around the campus? And it spit him, like what is it called? The etheric realm spits him back out into that fog? Fog is funny. I mean, am I wrong here? I just feel like I missed something about what happened. Or if it's just like his time in the etheric realm drove him mad. Is that what is supposed to have happened? Did I misunderstand the whole like boundary thing? Was she just talking about how he, like, his name is Fog? Because she says something about fear fog. And I thought that she was talking about like an actual magical thing, but now I'm like, his name is Fog. Is that all did I just mishear her? I think I just might have misheard her. What the fuck happened to him there? That this is like how he has turned out. What did they do to him? I don't understand. Why would did we know the etheric realm ever had this effect? I feel like that's really some fine print we should have been aware of. Ashley says, that's what I assume, like maybe the realm had something in the air that made you trip the entire time, and when he was pulled out, the trip goes bad, or makes you come down really quickly. I mean, maybe, but we're seeing him like months later with that like cat that he has to hold in order to be sane. Right? It feels like the effects of this are still on him. And I feel like that can't just be a bad trip. I don't know. But, okay, so we have this conversation. This is such a wild thing. Remember that Hyman has his body back and he is a traveler. And he is the only one that they know of who has the capabilities they're going to need to get out of the clock room. I can't remember the name of it. But to get out of there after they hit the back button and destroy Fillory. And he isn't really interested in helping them out. He's afraid of, pain, death, injury. And he really is not enjoying having a body anymore. He is wanting out. And from his head, Charlton speaks up to Elliot and is like, I have an idea for you, actually. And he doesn't think at all that Hyman would go for this. But it turns out the deal he wants to make is to get Hyman's spirit to be back in like the spirit realm and give his body over to Charlton because Charlton desperately wants to be in a body again. And everybody thinks that he's not going to do it. Like Marco's like, there's no way. And instead, he is like ready to do a jig. He is so excited. He says, on one condition, your head pal has to do weird things with my body. Sex things. No, nothing is too depraved. And Charlton's like doing this like cut him off at the neck sort of like, no, I'm not making this deal sort of motion. And it was kind of funny because like he does wind up going for it. And the end of the episode, we see him going upstairs ostensibly to fuck Elliot. So I guess that he's getting some of his wish fulfilled there. But he does go out of his way, Hyman, to say very specifically, I will be watching and whether you like it or not. And I'm just like, oh man, you really have to want that body pretty bad in order to agree that no matter what you do, he will always be able to see you and you'll never know if he's there or not. Like that would be awful. Hyman seems pretty attached to that house though, as far as I can remember. I don't remember the rules surrounding that. If he's just not in the house, maybe Hyman can't see him. I don't know if that's true. I don't know how that goes. But yeah, it's a pretty like intense deal that he made. It gets taken care of really quickly. There's not really a big deal made about how to do it. It's just like we tune in later and there's a bunch of crystals hanging from the ceiling and it's done. So meanwhile, there's this whole thing going on with Julia giving birth. And there's an odd moment where, well, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because I haven't talked about the world seed yet. All right, let me back up. So we have the scene where some of our friends are, well, they try and see if Charlton, aka Hyman, can travel because he's in a traveler body, but he's a different person, and it doesn't seem like it works. And everybody's like going through the doors into Fillory in order to get on their respective missions. And there's just this, like, did you guys sort of see the thing coming with the romantic relationship between Charlton and Elliot? Because there's a moment where he asks him to like, please come back and, stay alive and yada, yada, yada. And Elliot acts really weird about it. And I couldn't really interpret it. I feel like maybe his attitude is sort of like realizing that there is somebody here who cares about him and not really knowing what to do with that right now, because he's still dealing with like this betrayal of a guy that he had gotten pretty like intense about. And so there's a sort of like deliberate dismissiveness to the way that Elliot treats him in that moment that feels like him putting on a bit of a show to be like, it doesn't matter to me even. Like, you're not that important to me, even though it feels like he kind of is, So, I'm sorry, I said that they went to Fillory, but they're actually walking into that clock in order to get to the library. And I guess like they're going to be performing this ritual there. But Dean Fogg interrupts. I don't know how he got here. Are they in the library? Because it looks like the library. But I don't remember if we find out how Dean Fogg got there while he's supposed to be in the hospital. It may have been mentioned later, but I don't remember. But for now, all that's important is he steals the world seed and then he runs back to the hospital wing, and the baby has just been born, And they are about to perform that procedure to sever that connection between the baby and Julia. And it's going to be treated as this incredibly delicate operation. And Dean Fogg comes in out of nowhere and severs it really brutally with like, there's no ceremony, there's no focus to it at all. It's like he just has a cleaver and he goes flying in and chops it. And it was a really confusing moment because I was like, okay, he seems like an enemy right now, but also he did the thing that they were intending to do anyway. So why would he help them in a way? It doesn't make a lot of sense. We find out later that doing it in the delicate way would have actually maybe killed Julia, I think he says. I think he says specifically that she just outright died. And the specifics of that are escaping me, but they mention it later and we'll talk about that. So yeah, the whole thing with Dean Fogg is really odd. What a weird, like, sort of wrench to throw into things. And we jump back a little bit to everybody is looking at the like magical census and, able to see how many people are being taken out of Fillory. And it's Elliot, Josh, and Margot who are in the, I think, basement of the palace. And he gets raptured out. Elliot does. And like, it looks like that to them. But when he turns around, he is in the Taker realm, and the Dark King is there. And basically, the Dark King is like, all right, I'm about to open the door to the realm of the dead. When my guy comes through, I want you to seal it closed again. You can help keep this from being what you guys all think it's going to be, basically. And so we have this moment of him opening the door. And the whole time Elliot is begging him not to. He opens it and it appears that his lover has come through. And this is so awful. Seb is like, obviously elated, talking to what he thinks is his lover about how they don't have to worry anymore. We can be together forever. And he says, touch me. And the hand reaches out and he looks at it and it changes. Now, I don't know about you guys. I didn't see the change. When he suddenly backs away and looks really frightened, obviously what's meant to have been like obvious to us is the shape of his hand changes and like there's a change to his sleeve, I guess. But it looks so similar. I didn't catch it at all. And when he looks up, the beast is here. Y'all, when I tell you, I was completely floored. This is a really good idea. I don't know who came up with this, but this is a smart idea, especially considering this is the last episode of the show. I love it. I love it. And you know how much I have beaten the don't bring people back from the dead drum on this show, which they do repeatedly, but this is just really one of the best ways to do something like that. Have it be, oh yeah, he's dead, but he's like embracing that. That's like going to be the thing about him that's threatening now, is that he's dead, rather than he's trying to get a body back. He's trying to come back to life. No, he's dead and he's going to make everything else also dead, which, that feels right to me. And it's just so neat to see like the original villain. And it makes so much sense because this is his brother and he's a trickster and also very cruel and would know exactly how to play his brother. And there's also the aspect where he says to Seb, that you were really predictable. And, Seb asks him, what did you do to Lance? And his brother says, I have no idea. I think he must have moved on like hundreds of years ago because he's just not there. I just took his form. And as he is talking to Seb, he notices that Elliot is still casting to seal the door. And he makes one motion and yanks Elliot's hands into the air and breaks his fingers and his wrists. And it's so brutal. Oh my God, you guys. There's something about later on when they are alone in the hallway and Seb begins to heal Elliot's hands. The noises that Elliot is making are so real to genuine excruciating pain that I felt myself having this like visceral response to it, you know, because like your hands are so sensitive anyway. And just the idea of, because it basically, for all intents and purposes, looked like the beast just basically like grabbed him and twisted him, you know, like you would, twist a ear of corn off a stalk, something like that, you know? So yeah, there's a really interesting moment with the beast and Seb. He gets everything to pause again, which I'd forgotten he had been able to do. And he says, I knew that you had been chatting with my I had been chatting with my batty old writer friend, Cassandra, and I found out what you were trying to do to save him. You didn't work nearly so hard to save me from Plover, did you? And his brother says, of course I did, until I couldn't. I had to save everyone from you. I wish there was a little bit more here, because I want to know what that means. What does it look like to him to have tried to save his brother? And what was it that his brother remembers? You know, it's almost always that kind of conversation where two people remember things very differently isn't as satisfying as you want it to be, because you never get a real answer to what happened, and both sides are certain they're remembering things correctly. But I still would have liked it if there was a bit more like, you did? How? When did you ever do anything? You know? But nevertheless, we just really don't have time for that right now, which I understand. And he tries to say, you chose the dark path, but the beast says the Dark King. And I was like, he has a point there, buddy. You know, like, I understand that you were genuinely doing what you were doing out of love, whereas the beast is just like a machine of like malice and cruelty. But the intent behind it doesn't change the result, which is that a bunch of people died for nothing. You know, children, everybody, like, it didn't matter who they were. If they were in the wrong place, that was what happened. And so, while oftentimes the beast tends to play like mind games with the way he chooses to talk about something and interpret it, in this case, he's like dead exactly right. And I felt a little bit bad about it because I don't want him to be exactly right about the person he's fighting against. And thankfully, Seb's deal with trying to get his lover back, the fact that it seems Lance just moved on, takes that whole thing like completely out of the equation. I was glad in a way that we don't have another sort of loose end there that he could pursue and keep this story going. But I don't know. I just have such mixed feelings about what, like, I can't even remember what his fate winds up being. Does he get left in Fillory to die? He winds up with the time witch, the clock witch, right? Like in that weird sort of between place that is, as she puts it, without Fillory, it will be like much more difficult to find her. And that's meant to be sort of a happy ending because they actually like care about each other. That's right. Yeah, I don't know. I feel weird about it because I feel like I don't entirely know that he deserves that kind of happy ending. At the same time, it's not exactly a happy ending either, you know? And it's a weird thing to think too about the Chatwins being tied to Fillory in the way that they are, where it just feels like their destinies are so intrinsically linked that it is like Jane Chatwin, it feels like there is absolutely no way for her to leave. And once it's like I guess they can't let her leave before they destroy it, but I don't remember the reasoning. And obviously, like, after it's destroyed, she can't leave because I think that her exit basically kind of goes through Fillory, if I'm not mistaken. So she's sort of, like, closed off now from everything. But I really feel for the Chatwins in that they didn't necessarily want to be part of this, and they never got away from it. You know, no matter how old they got, no matter what else they tried to do with their lives, this place kept like reeling them back in, and they literally never escape it. That's pretty dark, honestly. Even considering that the two of them seem to wind up together in a happy way, they're still in that place. They don't even get to like die normally. It doesn't seem like. I don't know. Maybe they can, but the fact that the beast is still hanging around makes me feel like, I mean, that's the beast, though. I don't know. Maybe they would, once they die, they die. But is Jane Chatwin, like, does she age? I feel like there's something about this place that keeps her from aging as well. So are they just there forever? What's going on? Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm getting sidetracked by things that don't matter, probably, really. But it's just an interesting question because, you know, this is the last episode. Like, what happens here is what we are to understand just continues to be after the show is over, in essence. So it sort of feels like an eternal thing. And no offense, but if I had the option of like being stuck with a sibling having a tea party forever and getting to just die and move on and be with the person that I was like sacrificing half my kingdom to try and be with in the first place, I think I would take the second one. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you want that? Is he able to kill himself from here? Like, is that option available to them? I'm hoping that it's just not an immortality, that it's an sort of elf in Lord of the Rings thing, where you can still, like, die of an injury, but you wouldn't die of old age, or it wouldn't happen within, like, millennia. Anyway, sorry, I just get distracted sometimes. So the return of the beast is really, it pays off really well. I love how in the library, Fen and Zelda and Alice are standing around trying to figure out what to do next, and they begin to hear, the hunting we will go, a hunting we will go, and she recognizes the voice, and she has this, like, physical reaction when she hears it that I felt like was some nice acting. You can, she almost doubles over like she's going to throw up kind of thing, you know? And they run into this other room that is warded, but it's not going to stand up forever. And Zelda basically is like, I am going to not only buy you some time, but I am going to close the other wells so that he can't just like world hop. And she tells them that their one hand is plenty because Alice has been feeling like she can't cast with just one hand. And not only that, but like talks about internal circumstances and how it's not possible to control them externally completely, but you can control your internal circumstances. And that winds up being sort of a key for Alice in that apparently her, like, accepting herself as she is with all of her shortcomings and flaws assists her in being able to do magic with just one hand, which is kind of a neat idea. It's like, it doesn't feel entirely earned because there's not enough room in this episode to do everything. But I really do like the concept of that, you know? And so, yeah, I'm going to have to initiate permafrost. It'll stop the dead using the fountains to get to other worlds. Once I initiate, every portal will close within minutes. So, evidently, because, like, the beast makes it to Fillory. So he gets out of there early enough that he's able to still use one. But at the very least, like I said, it makes it so they can't just, like, world hop and absolutely consume everything. Alice gives Zelda a big hug, and it's kind of a sweet moment because they have been so at odds. And as we know now, Zelda really did have the best of intentions, but she was really foolish and idealistic to the point of, like, delusion at times, you know? And there was just such naivete there. And I really kind of like the fact that she decides to give herself up, and as she says to Alice, because Alice is understandably saying, "You're going to die," and she says, to a librarian, death isn't the end, it's just a relocation to a new branch, or a transfer to a new branch, which is simultaneously reassuring and also, like, so depressing. There's the way it's worded, what it really kind of sounds like she's saying is, don't worry, even after I die, I'm still going to have to work here. Which, I know it's meant to be sort of hopeful and like, oh, life continues on. But it really just feels like, in the context of an American, there's no escape from capitalism, even after death. You know, even though I know she's not like, that's not the way that job worked. But it feels like that when I hear it. And I was just like, ooh, that's just not really that doesn't sound better. You know? So we have the moment where the beast comes in and she initiates permafrost, and he's watching her with this sort of amused expression as she begins to cast, because he clearly thinks she's going to do something to try and defend herself and knows that that's not going to work. He's just so powerful. But when she snaps her fingers, there's an effect that he seems to recognize. And he knows exactly what she did. Did you just... And she just goes, And he's like, all right, guys, I guess we're going to have to really rush. But I'll find another way, and you won't be there to see it anyway. And he grabs her and does this sort of twirl and dips her. And then he just touches her face, and she turns to straight up ash. It's like... She looks like in Interview with a Vampire, when those two women are left in the well, basically, the two vampires, and they come down in the morning, and they have been just this, it's like this perfectly preserved ash statue that when they touch it immediately, like, falls apart. That's sort of what she looks like here. It's a pretty wild effect, and I know that it's probably like CGI or maybe combo of like practical effects and CGI. But I've seen this sort of thing done before, and I feel like this is the best I've seen it. I really thought it was like spooky and also sad, which is a tough thing to really straddle that line. So we have Seb healing Elliot's hands. And telling him, I can hold off the dead. You're going to be able to do what you need to do. Elliot, of course, doesn't want to let him go because despite the fact that he can't, like, be killed, he's still going to die because he's going to stay here. And Elliot is very sad about that. Seb says, who says I'll die? But Elliot's just kind of like, yeah, but you're gonna, though. We know he doesn't. And I don't know, I'm not totally sure if Elliot knows about what actually happens to him. But, okay, so then we bounce back to Penny and Julia. It turns out that Julia is in a coma. And they said that her organs are shutting down, and it just looks like she is absolutely going to die. And I love after Penny finds out this information, he's standing there like there's an expression on his face of like that kind of panic where you are in your head going repeatedly, there has to be something we can do. Like, you haven't accepted things. He is clearly, this is just not fitting with his plan for the world, and he's going to find a way to not do this. So at this point, he sits down with Plum and tries to convince her to do the time thing. And she has to tell him, we already did it and it didn't work. I had one chance. And she explains the whole thing. I'm going to go through because I don't entirely remember. I've only watched this episode the one time. And there are some things that she says happened the first time that I think I'm not entirely remembering. This time loop is like, she says slightly less bad than the first one. The first one got really bad really quickly. So this time around, it's like, it looks like the same things are happening, but they've been slowed down some, which isn't exactly like helpful. It doesn't seem like that's going to matter in the end. She says, you took me to my grandmother, Jane. A time loop is the only way to undo the, let's see, that I'm trying to quote it, but they talk so fast that the subtitles are like gone before I have a chance to read them. Is the only way to undo time without getting that grouchy time traveler's knickers in a knot. Clean start. But it's big magic, though. Unfortunately, she told me that I only had enough plasma to do it once. Oh, I'm just realizing that Jane Chatwin is prego in that scene. I didn't notice the first time, but now that I'm watching it, she sits down before the camera really gets a good look at her, but when the camera pulls away under the edge of the table, you can really see her baby bump. And it's funny to think like they wrote Julia as being pregnant because she got pregnant on set. So two of them, I guess, but it's not like Jane Chatwin's a big part anymore. It's just kind of funny to me. She says only Josh had escaped Fillory. In the West, they had no way of knowing if the ark even worked, so they got trapped waiting. I pushed Josh to find a way, and the seed, they tried it here and failed, and Zelda took them to the Netherlands. They never came back. And he asks, well, why didn't you tell them all not to do that? And she's like, I tried to tell, and none of you wanted to listen to anything that I had to say, which is fair. So then they start to realize that likely what has happened. Well, first they go and talk to Jane Chatwin and tell her they're destroying Fillory. So I guess Plum really had no idea. I'm thinking that like they went and told her they had this conversation earlier than they did. But Plum walking in on their conversation is a little weird. Even in the script, it feels weird, right? Is that just me? Anyway, Plum, Chatwin sort of reassures her that even if Fillory is destroyed, she'll still be here. And then Penny realizes that Fogg can remember time loops. What if he remembered something and is trying to change this one? So they go to see him, and he is clearly fucking out of it. But they decide that they're going to try some magic that is apparently illegal most places. I'm guessing because it is considered cruelty to animals. Thankfully, externally, it doesn't look like it's cruel. You know, the cat, there's no like sudden attack of hisses or anything, but the crazy goes into the cat for a time and allows him, as long as he's holding it, to come back to lucidity. So they have this orange soft kitty, and I tell you what, guys, this cat is so like I just wanted to squash my whole face in it. They don't often, for TV, they often don't pick fat, smooshy cats. Or they'll pick kittens, you know? And it was so cute to see this big, fat, fluffy boy. Oh, what a cute butt. And so, yeah, Dean Fogg comes back to himself for a moment. Thank you, Professor. He just says it in such an even tone. I managed to get everyone out of the Netherlands in time. Plum may not know, but yes, they are going to be attacked. And tell Katie the seed is in the lab. And Julia would have died if we had let that, if I had let that surgery be performed by Eleanor. If you had succeeded in delicately separating the cord, it would be rendered useless. Quick, rough cut, counterintuitive. The cord goes into a state of shock, allowing it a chance for imitation. This will let Julia recover. Last time you realized far too late. The only catch is you need to attach it to someone else who can handle the psychic input from a very powerful traveler baby. So they wind up using Penny. And that is what gives him the ability to travel again. So he is able at the last second to swoop in and save Margot. Because she otherwise would have been trapped down there in, time lock world, whatever you want to call it. I can't remember what they call it. Brought a ham sandwich just in case. No luck, though. So, yeah, that scene with Margot, it's a really sweet moment. She gives him one of her eyes so that she can make sure that they get out okay. Julia gets to hold the baby, and there's a pretty sweet moment when Penny is explaining to her that he can hear her thoughts because the baby is giving him the ability again, and he's hearing her questions about what she wants to name the kid and stuff, and they decide that they're going to give her the middle name Quentin, which is really sweet. I like that idea, I never thought of Quentin as a sort of unisex name, but I guess that could work. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but for a middle name especially, you can just kind of do what you want because nobody ever uses them except for federal forms. We always use our initial too. I say R, even though I don't have a middle name because my parents could not agree on one, so I just didn't get one. So, yeah, we have the destruction of Fillory. It's coming crashing down around Margot, and it really looks like that's it, and it's honestly upsetting. I really enjoy her as a character. I have had some things to say about this girl's acting, and I stand by it. She's not as good as I really want her to be for a role like this. But watching her really give herself up, she has always been a strong person, but there's been a real selfish streak to her. And this feels like such a completely selfless act. And I really just think it's extra powerful, I really love the moment, too, where the Beast comes into the throne room to see his brother and says, "What is this?" in a tone of outrage. Because he came here to fucking take over, and now it's being just erased. He says that hardly seems sporting. I really enjoy, too, the concept that because he's stuck in Fillory, and there's no more access to the wells, it's not like he can get out of here before this all happens and go to another world. He's going to be stuck as this place crumbles around him and sort of die a second time. And it's nice to know that he got locked into a dead end again. It's reassuring. So Penny comes and saves Margot. Come with me if you want to live. It was really important to Josh that I say that. And they teleport out of there just as we see Fillory, like from space, which, by the way, is literally like flat and floating in space. What an odd look. Break up into, like, you know, thousands of pieces. And so then we go to the scene where they are creating the new Fillory. And they have to get Fen for this because she lived there her whole life. And they need her memories of Fillory to kind of like guide the seed towards what it's going to do. And initially she starts just talking geographically about like the names of places. And eventually it becomes pretty clear that she can't, that's not effective. She has to speak about Fillory from personal experience that causes an emotional reaction. And it's really rather beautiful because while it could have been very easy for the show to simply be like, oh, she's remembering all these beautiful things from her childhood and how wonderful it was, and everything becomes just as she remembered it. But they have a nicely nuanced, very adult sort of approach, which is, I'm looking back and realizing that it was beautiful, and there are moments that bring tears to my eyes to remember. And then there are things that were really fucked up that I didn't appreciate in the moment were really fucked up. And as an adult, I look back and I'm like, wow, what the hell? And I enjoy that she's like in the midst of the spell saying this stuff. And Josh stops and says, what are you doing? And she's like, maybe we don't want Fillory to be exactly what it was. We were really backward. And I think that maybe we should change a few things. I think that could be okay. That place could be backwards as shit. Maybe we don't want to replicate that. We can't. So, yeah. They need a wellspring. So she has to keep that in mind. Keep some of her memories and feelings of Fillory. Can't I just have the best of Fillory and the best of Earth? The best of those cool movies Todd and I watched. That's the home I want. And that's what we deserve. And as she's saying that, the seed activates. And a moment later, everybody who was involved in this spell gets zapped to the new world. And nobody knew that that's what happened. I'm not sure if there's any written record of this seed being used in the past and what happened when it was used. But when the light dissipates, they are all gone, and it's just Elliot and Katie remaining in the room. And they have no idea what happened. And by the end of this episode, it's still unclear. Elliot has no answers. They are talking, Dean Fogg and Professor Lipson. Is that her name? I always want to say Lipton. Might be Lipton, though. They're talking about what could have happened. And she's thinking maybe the seed needed to create a new world and it just vaporized them, which is a very bleak thought. But yeah, I really liked the fact that there's a sort of there's still a feeling, as I said before, of hopefulness to the end of this episode. Despite the fact that they don't know what happened to their friends, because we know how everybody in this show is. They'll find a way back to each other. They'll find a way to connect Earth and this new world. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time before they get it set up and they figure it out. So as much as it's kind of sad, you have complete faith that it'll be a happy ending eventually. We don't get to see it, but that's okay, because I don't need to. I know these people. I know how it's going to be. And there's a sweetness too with Julia and Penny, and her, saying to him, I know that this isn't exactly how you wanted this to be, I'm sorry that there's always another quest and you just wanted to make a home. And she has this regretful look and he says, well, this is a batshit way to do it, but it is a way. Someone's got to go find those idiots. And I'm wondering, like, you know, he's going to have to carry the baby with him the whole time. And that's the one thing that I feel a little bit disappointed that we don't get to see for the next season that would have been. I like the idea that there's something written into the show that requires the father to be in constant contact with the baby to get things done. So that his power is associated with like child rearing, which is so often what we do to female characters, is we make their power be associated with getting pregnant and child rearing. And it's just really tired. And I understand the like reasoning behind it in a like, that is a miracle kind of theory, but it often gets to the point where it feels like it's reducing women to that being like the only thing that's special about them. That can be really frustrating. So I really sort of like the fact that Penny's power is like back online, but he would have to have a kid with him every time. And like eventually that kid's going to be grown and not be around him anymore. And so he'll have to say goodbye to doing this stuff at some point, you know, unless he constantly has his kid be in on his quests. Which is kind of neat because it has like a built-in like retirement plan so that eventually he and Julia will get to like settle down because they won't be able to do, I mean, they'll be able to do stuff, but not that involves travel. They'll have to figure out other ways to get around if they have quests. So that will slow them down. And then we have the scene with Elliot and Charlton. That's pretty sweet. I love Charlton being like, could you ever be interested in me romantically? And Elliot says, what, a guy who like took somebody else's body and used to live in my head? And he's like, no, a guy who's like, you know, stable and emotionally available. And I love that. Elliot's just, there's a defensiveness, but then it's immediately followed up by like, oh, you got me though. And then we get to see the new land. Fen says, look what I found. This place has knife trees and naturally occurring pizza ovens. And so Josh has like found a market here if anyone is hungry. I thought he meant like a drink, and I was like, wait, what? But he meant the type of pizza. So a naturally occurring pizza oven that creates pizza. It's not just that the pizza ovens exist. Pizzas come out of them. Amazing. I mean, does it get better? And then there's an area that it's got crispy bacon that just grows. I don't know who made this world, like from a writing perspective, but they were hungry when they created it, and I'm fine with it. So eventually, Fen, because she is this world's birth mother, she names Margot High King Margot. I don't remember if she names the new land. Does she? Specifically, like, give it a name? But it's a really sweet moment. Like, and I don't know. I liked this sort of... An olive branch feels like it's making it seem like there's such a conflict between them that really like is specific that needed resolution. But it feels more like they have come to terms with each other because there was a conflict, don't get me wrong, about her having abandoned them in another world. But that never really got completely talked through and resolved. So it doesn't feel like that's what is happening here. Let's see. I hereby dub thee High King Margot, the creator, instead of the destroyer. But yeah, they don't name the place. I'm interested to find out if they had an idea on what they were going to name this place, you know? Yeah, so that's how the episode ends, with all of them like hanging out in this new land, not sure how they're going to get back, but confident that they will. And there's a steady food supply, and things are looking pretty like optimistic. And Margot turns over the ark that looks like a very pregnant seahorse and presses the bottom of it to release everybody from Fillory out of there into the new land. And before we get to see any of the effect of that, we smash cut to credits. And that is the end of the episode. So, yeah, I feel good about that ending. It's just, I really didn't know how they were going to pull it off. And this whole season was very inconsistent. But I feel like overall, I'm going to have a good impression of this show because of that finale. I'm satisfied by it. I bet there's a ton of fanfic out there, huh? So I'm over time. I'm going to have to wrap up. But thank you again so much to everybody for commissioning episodes and for hanging out in the chat. Let's see. Ashley says, I don't think she names the new land. Okay, sorry. I missed some chat. And I hope that I did it justice. I know I can be hard on things sometimes, but I tend to be harder on things that I've grown to like. You know, that just, you start demanding more because you're like, I know you can. I know you're capable of it. But yeah, overall, I'm glad to have watched it. And it feels like I've been covering the show forever. So it's going to be weird to not have this anymore. Just got sort of used to it being in my life, you know. So again, thank you all. I appreciate your support. And I guess we'll see what comes next. Wahoo. All right. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.